Hello class, this is a video tutorial on trigonometric equations, part 1. Much like solving regular equations using inverse operations, here are just 5 examples of inverse operations. So if you have plus 2, we minus 2. If we have minus 3, we add 3, and so on. Trig equations are similar as each trig ratio has an inverse, which we've already been using to find unknown angles. So here are 3 examples of doing this. If we have sine of x, to find x, we do the inverse of the angle that we have. Of the value that we have. And here's just 2 more examples. If we have cos of some angle y, we can solve for y by doing the inverse of cosine, which in this case will give us 30, and so on. However, the additional factor that we must now consider is are the domain boundaries given, as multiple solutions may exist within those boundaries. Now, it may seem odd that there might be multiple solutions, but I'll demonstrate an example as to why this might happen. So let's say we have this question. Let's solve for x. So sine x equals half in the domain 0 degrees is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 360. What this means, find any angle x between 0 and 360 that when we substitute it into x gives us half. Well, we normally know if we see sine of x equals half, we just do the inverse of sine, gives us 30. However, if we go back to our unit circle, 30 degrees, which is in our first quadrant like this would give us half on the y-axis, that's 0.5. However, this isn't the only angle that will give us half when we substitute it into sine. If you consider, in the second quadrant, because y is positive here, we could also find 0.5, and that being 30 degrees in the second quadrant. However, because we are measuring from the initial side here, we need to figure out what this angle is in purple, this one here. Well, to figure out what that is, we just find the first angle in the first quadrant, and we apply whatever operation that we see here. So in this case, we would do 180 take away 30 degrees, meaning 150 degrees is also a solution for x when we substitute here. So let's demonstrate the solutions now. Take a look. If we had sine of 30 and sine of 150, if we calculate both of these, they should both give us half. So both of these are possible solutions. So let's do more examples of these to get our head around this a little bit more. Here we go. So let's solve for x in the domain 0 degrees to 360 degrees. Cos of x equals half, positive or minus half. Well, to solve this, let's just treat this as positive half first to find the answer in the first quadrant, whatever it might be here in the first quadrant. So x is equal to inverse cosine of positive half. Well, this will give us, 60 degrees. And that is that is one answer in the first quadrant. However, because we have plus or minus half, this tells us that we could have an answer. Oh, sorry, actually, let me illustrate it here. So this angle here of 60, when we draw our triangle, this length here is 0.5. Because remember, cosine is the adjacent to this angle. However, can you see how if we drew the triangle in the fourth quadrant and measured this angle, this would also give us positive half. So to find that angle, we just do 360, take away 60 degrees. That's just 300 degrees. This in blue. You probably noticed that I left some space in between because it's not just positive half that we're looking for. We're also looking for negative half. Meaning, let me erase these. Meaning that we could actually figure out what the angle is here. Because if we draw 60 degrees here, this x value here is negative 0.5. So we need to figure out what this angle is. Well, that's going to be 180, take away 60, which is 120. And lastly, we could draw the triangle on this side, giving us 60 degrees, meaning we should measure it all the way from the initial. That's going to be 180 plus the angle, which is 240. We can test this. So let's take a look. If we do cosine of 60, cosine of 120, cos 240, and cos of 300. These four answers should be plus or minus half, otherwise I would have done something incorrect. There we go. So these four solutions are in between 0 and 360 degrees, and when we substitute them for x, those answers give us plus or minus half. Alright, so this video is going a bit longer than I expected. I'll do the remaining examples in my next video. I'll show you the questions here. You can attempt them yourselves before you watch the video, or you can watch me and you can work alongside. Hope to see you then. Best of luck.